Hey everyone, my name is Reeves, and I recently had someone ask me the question, what was it like going to graduate school? I know you may hear me talk a lot about my undergrad experiences and talk about my law school experiences. I don't really talk a whole lot about grad school. Well, for me, let me just tell you, there were 4 parts of it. And for those of you, let me kind of set this up accordingly. I went to graduate school at the University of South Florida in their College of Public Health program to get a Master's of Public Health and Industrial Hygiene. You don't even know about what the actual degree is, which I enjoy and I use and so forth. Just know that's what I was pursuing. The first part of the journey is finding the right school and then trying to get in. So you've got to remember, when I started looking into graduate school, I started right after I graduated from college. So I graduated in 1991. And then by the fall of 1991, into the spring of 1992, I was studying for the GRE. I actually took the GRE. I took 2 tests, the general test and the subject matter test, which was annoying as hell because I don't like standardized tests, didn't do particularly great on them. And then once I got those scores, I then proceeded to apply to graduate schools all over the place. Now at the time, my intent was to go and get a master's degree in cellular biology. So I was looking for a Master of Science in cellular biology. And to be honest, I had not given any thought beyond what I was going to do with that degree. I just knew that my undergrad was in biology. I liked cellular biology, so I figured I'd just keep that going, thinking maybe somewhere down the line I would actually transition into getting a PhD in that area if possible, or maybe segueing into medical school. Now I'll tell you, I applied for a lot of different graduate schools and did not get admitted to one of them, not even one. I often tell people that my grades in undergrad weren't spectacular, so I wasn't overly surprised, but I was hoping that I'd get picked up by a few. And so when I got my first job in the spring of 1992, I decided to take a little break from trying to get into graduate school again, and then probably the fall of 1992, I started recommitting my efforts all over again. At the time, my boss, when I was working for the state of Florida, turned to me and he noticed that I was starting to gear up for graduate schools, and he asked me the question, what did I want to do with my master's assignments? Nobody had asked me that question. So he was like, so what do you want to do with the degree? And I paused and he said, did you want to be a glorified lab rat? Now that, for those of you who have the master's degree in that area and you're like, hey, I don't appreciate that. No disrespect. But he's effectively asking me because the job that I was doing at the time as a safety and health specialist gave me the opportunity to combine my science background with the ability to go out in the field. And those 2 things works great for me. So he was like, if that is what you like, why would you not work and get you a degree that would further that? And so he told me about the Masters of Public Health program. And so I was like, oh, I never thought about it. Well, as fate would have it, in the state of Florida, there's only one Masters of Public Health program that has a Master's in Industrial Hygiene. And it just so happens to be at the University of South Florida. The same school that I pledged my fraternity was my crosstown rival school because I went to school at the University of Tampa. It was back in my college town, so it was like, wow, because I was living in Tallahassee. So at this particular point, he was like, the best part is that you don't have to worry about getting in right away. You can go in as a non-degree seeking student and try to apply at that point. I didn't necessarily do that. I went ahead and applied. And if I remember correctly, I don't think they required the subject matter test, just a general test. And my general test scores was good enough so that I could get in. So I was able to basically transfer from Tallahassee to a field office in Tampa. And in the spring of 1993, I had the opportunity to enroll, and I got admitted to the University of South Florida's College of Public Health program, working towards a degree in public health. And therein lies the end of phase 1, which brings me to phase 2. Phase 2 was the reality. When you go to undergrad and if you go in the way that is traditionally gone, where you're going straight out of high school, you're going on campus, you're looking at life very differently, because when you're a college student, that's your whole world. Your whole world is you are just a college student, normally. But my situation, when you get into graduate school, you're probably going to find a lot of students there who are professional students or people who are returning back to the academic arena, or persons like me, because I was a professional student. So what does that mean by being professional? Well, most people who are taking graduate classes are taking them when? At night. Because why? It's right when they get off work. And so for me, I went from basically working an 8 hour day. I would work from like 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock. And then my classes would be either 6 to 9, 6 to 8, or 6 to 10, depending on the class. And so it was just this wild transition because I had never worked and gone to school at the same time. So that kind of threw me completely off. The other thing that kind of shocked me was that spirit of camaraderie wasn't there. You know, when you're an undergrad, you may have different majors, but you're all similarly situated. All of you are probably young teenagers, 18 to 19 years old. All of you are probably first time away from home. You're excited about meeting new people. You're excited about interacting. There's all these different organizations and events that you can participate in. It's just wonderful. Not like that when you're a graduate student, or at least the way when I was going through. Because you got to remember, most of the people who were there with me had jobs. Quite a few were married. Quite a few had kids. So guess what? They were coming there for one purpose: go to class and then go home. So for most of my classes, with the exception of a couple of them, they were either 6 to 9 or 6 to 10. So you'd come there at about 5:45. You go in at 6. You're sitting down. You'd have one break. The break would be about 15 minutes, and it's kind of hard. You're not really bonding with anybody. And see, in my area, there were certain classes that everybody had to take in order to get your degree, and then you had your specialty classes for your particular area. So for me, there was only like 3 classes I think we all had to take, if I remember correctly. I think it was like health management, epidemiology, and biostatistics. Boring, but we had to take those classes. But again, I say, no camaraderie, because most of the people, as soon as they would come in, the number of times I would see classmates going out, calling home, checking on the kids, finding out if they need to stop by and pick up something to eat on the way back, and then all those types of things. That was completely different. So what happens is that you get shocked into realizing that the experience that you had when you were in college is vastly different from when you're actually in graduate school. Very, very different. In this particular instance, the shock of realizing that you're in a different environment caught me completely off guard, which leads me into phase 3, the grind. The way graduate schools work, especially if you're part-time, there's only a max number, depending on the school, but a max number of credits that you can take. So for me, a max number as a part-time student was like 9 credit hours. And if I remember correctly, you had to have 36 credit hours. Like, if I remember correctly, it was like 36 or 42 credit hours in order to graduate. So if you stop and you think about it, if you don't go during the summer, or if you take like one class, it's going to take you, about 2 years to kind of get through the program. And so it's wild, because what ends up happening is the grind is real, because you're going from work to doing your class, and then you got homework. So for me, it was rough, because I was having these periods of time that you get assignments that were due on the 2 days later. And so guess what would happen? You would go to work, go to class, come back home, grab something to eat, do your homework, go to bed, get back up, and do the same routine over and over again. And it's one thing when you have an 8-hour day job and you go back home and you relax. It's another when you tack on an extra 3 to 4 hours. So you've got to picture this. You get up in the morning at 7 something, 7:30 you roll into work, you get there at 8. I leave work at 5. From 5, I'm not even going home. I'm driving straight to the university. I may grab something at McDonald's along the way so I can get there and be there ready to rock and roll at 6 o'clock. If class was 6 to 10, oh gosh, heaven help me. Most classes from 6 to 9. You're done at 9. Shoot the breeze for a second. Now, boom, you are riding out back to the crib. You get back about 10 o'clock. If you got homework, you're lucky you want to get a jump start on it, because the only day you may have available to you may be that next day, depending on what day of the week you have, if you have a gap. So you want to get started on there. Now it's probably 10, 11 o'clock at night. You're going to bed probably 11:30, 12 o'clock. That's your routine. And it may not seem cray when you first do it, but it grinds when you've done it when you have to do that for a couple of years. So I started in 1993. I didn't finish until 1995. And so for me, that was not fun whatsoever. It was necessary. There were aspects and classes I took that I really enjoyed. And let's be clear, I had a great time in terms of academically. But that grind of going from work to going to class to going to homework and to doing it all over again, and I was going year round so I could get done in 2 years, not cool, but it was necessary. Which brings me to the final point. Phase 4, satisfaction. And that's the point when you realize you have accomplished your goal. Now, for me, when I graduated from undergrad, I didn't graduate summa cum laude or anything like that. I always tell people I graduated, thank you, Lordy. And I was very happy about that. No shame in my game. But I had told myself that if I went to graduate school, that my experience was going to be so different, that I was going to utilize my full aspects of my academic abilities. And I did. And so one of the ways you have, at least in my program, some graduate schools, they have dissertations that you have to do. In mine, you actually have to take a comprehensive examination that covers all 2 years of your coursework, including your subject matter information. So what does that mean? Well, that means you have to take a test that encompasses all of the general classes that you had to take for the school, and then there was a subject matter component for your particular specialty area. So I had to take a graduate comprehensive exam for the College of Public Health that covered the general courses that we all had to take. And then since I was getting a Master's of Public Health and Industrial Hygiene, I had a specific industrial hygiene track of test as well. And so when I got done with all that, there was this sense of relief, satisfaction, because I paused, and for me, it was this realization that I had something I could share with my mom. My mother got a master's degree. I wanted to match that or do better. And getting that degree and looking back, it was almost a validation, because I'll be honest, even though I consider myself a smart person, I had some study issues in terms of my ability to study. Like I could retain it when you explain it to me, but for some odd reason I couldn't retain it enough to be able to write it down. I didn't figure out what my study problems were until like my senior year, or like late junior, early senior year. So I wanted to do this and prove to myself, not only get the degree because I wanted to get the degree, but I wanted to get it in a manner to prove to myself that I had the academic acumen to be able to excel, which is silly because I knew I did, but it was like I had to prove it to myself. So for me, the satisfaction of getting the degree, achieving the goals, passing the classes, doing well, and for those of you who are wondering, I say I'm like a big mid-range B plus range in terms of my grades, and actually knocking out the comprehensive examination and getting the degree was awesome. I can tell you, it's kind of funny, I had quite a few people come to my law school graduation. Quite a few people come to my undergrad graduation. Only person who came to my grad school was my mom. And for me, that was okay. Because the satisfaction came from realizing that I had achieved this goal. And I can tell you, for me, it was a great feeling. It was an intense feeling because by the time I realized it, 2 years had passed. And it didn't even feel like 2 years had passed. Because like I said before, adjusting to that shock early on and then dealing with the grind. Once I got to the final part where I realized all I have to do is basically take this test, submit my paperwork for graduation to university, get my cap and gown, and then ride out accordingly, it was all good in the neighborhood. And for those of you who are thinking about graduate school, I would encourage you to do this as well. If you are thinking about going to graduate school, make sure you see what the experience is, if in terms of whether or not it's going to work for you. Ask those questions in terms of homework assignments, in terms of classes. A lot of graduate schools have online capabilities, so you don't have to do like I did. Because back then, the program I was in there was no such thing as online, so you had to go in. But there are some programs where they want you to come in, whether it be fully or partly. So you want to find out how that's going to impact you. If you decide to go to graduate school, trust me when I tell you, it is a rewarding experience, because it's a specialty area, if that's what you're going for, that you will see the opportunity to apply a lot of the things that you've done professionally in this particular environment, if that's what you're doing. And I'll also tell you this, it's a big difference culturally when you're going to graduate school as a professional, as an adult professional, as opposed to when you're 18 to 19. By the time you've gone to graduate school, depending on how old you are, if you're a person of a certain age, meaning if you're over the age of 21, 22, and you've already had the undergrad experience, this is a true professional academic experience and so forth. Very, very different, but just as rewarding. I would encourage you to do so if you have the chance. Trust me, it worked out great for me.